Welcome everybody to the Online with the CMC, Slaying the Genre, Investigating Genre Headings. Barb and Mary will be doing a co-presentation this morning. They will be answering your questions at the end. So please click on the chat box at the bottom screen and type in your questions. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll allow everybody to unmute themselves if they'd rather ask their question verbally. So take it away, ladies.
All right. Hi, this is Barb. Hello to all of you. Thanks for coming. Mary and I hope that you will find useful information in this talk. I don't know about Mary, but I have struggled with and still sometimes struggle with genre headings and when and how to use them. The most common source is LCGFT, also known as the Library of Congress Genre Form Terms. When I started cataloging, I only knew about LCGFT, and years later, after learning about other thesauri, I still use it the majority of the time because the headings can be controlled in connection. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy seeing the text turn blue after I click on Control Single Heading. It's just one of my weird things. Today we'll touch on LCGFT, but follow along because Mary and I are going to explore several lesser known thesauri for genre headings.
Okay, so today our agenda includes introductions of Barb and I, the definition of genre form, some genre form considerations, a look at different genre thesauri, some examples, and our list of resources.
All right, so this is Barb again. I recently celebrated my 2nd anniversary working at the Cataloging Maintenance Center. Previously, I was the cataloger for Pinal County in Arizona, and before that, a librarian at the Florence Community Library in Florence, Arizona. One of my goals for 2024 is to assemble the 4,803-piece Harry Potter Lego set that I purchased last August. My cats, who you can see below, can't wait to help me with the Legos.
And hello all, this is Mary again. I've been working with the Cataloging Maintenance Center for over 2 years now, and before working here, I worked as a cataloger for a vendor and as a cataloger and technical services supervisor at a public library. In my free time, I dabble in photography, write occasionally, love to travel, see my photo from the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery below, read, and take walks in nature. I'm also a cat mom to 2 tuxies, Merlin on the left and Schroeder on the right. Okay, to start out, we are going to define genre and form. According to the Library of Congress, a genre form describes what a resource is rather than what a resource is about. Subject headings, or LCSH, which is one of the terminologies out there, relay what a resource is about in comparison. Some examples of genre would include detective and mystery films like A Haunting in Venice, horror fiction such as Carrie by Stephen King, and fantasy television programs, our running theme, and an example being Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Next, we're going to look at some genre form considerations. One of the first things to consider when looking at genre is the difference between LCSH, or Library of Congress subject headings, authority records, and an LCGFT genre authority record for a term. In our example, fantasy fiction, you can see there is an LCSH for fantasy fiction and a genre or LCGFT for fantasy fiction. The LCSH authority record for fantasy fiction is on the left, and the LCGFT for fantasy fiction is on the right. With similar see also references, it might seem odd to determine which you use. But remember, a LCSH is about the item, while the genre is what the item is. Some good examples of these two terms would be female heroes and young adult fantasy fiction. This book is a look at female heroes in YA fantasy fiction and a literary criticism based on fantasy fiction stories. Because this item is about fantasy fiction, it includes an LCSH of fantasy fiction, American. In comparison, you can consider the title The Lord of the Rings, which is a fantasy trilogy, so it is fantasy fiction, and hence has the genre heading of fantasy fiction. Another consideration for genre form is the difference between genre and form. Genre looks at the content of an item, while form describes the physical characteristics of an item. For example, consider the title Catherine of Aragon, the True Queen by Alison Ware. This title's contents are historical fiction, hence its record would include the genre term historical fiction. In comparison, you have Heartstopper by Alice Osman. This item's form is a graphic novel and would include the form term graphic novels in its record in the 655 field. However, you can also consider that Heartstopper includes both form and genre, as it is also a romance comic. Therefore, it would include the genre term romance comics in its record.
Okay, here's the list of just a few of the genre thesauri that we have, or do we have access to? And where can these genres be found? And then there are a few examples. Let's see. The most common source is LCGFT, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes though, you need a wider selection of genre headings, like what's in LCGFT doesn't quite describe what you're cataloging. Let's see, you can find a list of different genre thesauri and sometimes a link to them at the address that I have below, and I believe that's included in our references, and I think you can click on it. But this has for the genre form standards. Now, when you go to loc.gov, there's also subject heading and term source codes. So even though it says they are just subject headings, sometimes you can find genre headings in that area just because, you know, they're general thesauri, they cover a broad spectrum of terms, and so, you know, don't totally ignore subject headings, just, you know, maybe take a look at them. All right, Mary, I'm done.
Okay, so next we're going to look at some examples. Our first genre example is for a biography about Annie Turnbow Malone. As shown in the right screenshot, we can tell this item is a biography by the code in the fixed fields BIOG field of B, which stands for biographies. In our screenshot for this title, we have a few different thesauri used to display genre. We have an LCGFT genre heading from the Library of Congress of Biographies. We also have an RVMGF heading, which is part of a controlled vocabulary in French created by Université Laval in Quebec City.
All right. So in this example, LCGFT was used for the 655 fields by the cataloger, but you can see that the last two fields, that connection has actually added the RVMGF fields on its own. So, and also, side note, LCGFT terms cannot be subdivided geographically. From the literature I've read, the terms are meant to be expressed only in an subfield A and subfield 2 LCGFT format.
Okay, our next example looks at a mixed materials collection that encompasses materials about two nurses from the same family and with the same name, Margaret Helk. This record includes 3 of our genre thesauri, including LCGFT, RVMGF, and AAT. The Library of Congress genre form terms include photographs and family histories. The RVMGF terms include the same terms, but in French per the thesaurus. Our last genre thesaurus, the Art and Architecture thesaurus, includes the term photographs with a subfield 2 of AAT, which is the identifier for this thesaurus. The 2 pictured items are a photograph of one of the Margarets, which would of course merit the inclusion of the AAT thesaurus, and a set of watch chains and a nursing pin.
This is one of the many cool items that I've cataloged for the Dixon Public Library. When I first received it, I had no idea what it was. I asked around, and fortunately, one of my friends who is an artist was able to explain to me that it was artwork created by the process of embossing. So I consulted the TGM, or the Thesaurus for Graphic Materials, for headings. Let's see. And these headings are applicable to 2-dimensional, cheaply pictorial graphic materials, among them prints, photographs, drawings, and ephemera, whether they are part of a book or in a manuscript, graphic, or other collection. Okay, so all thesauri are not created the same. Because of all the different agencies out there creating thesauri, each thesaurus has its own design and ways to search. This slide has the homepage of the TGM. I wanted to give you an example of one thesaurus site, and for this one, I did make some tweaks for visibility and to fit everything on the slide. So these don't look exactly like the website. When you go to a thesaurus that you haven't used before, take the time to get to know the site. I would have saved myself so much time if I had done this with TGM too. Anything that you might ever want to know about TGM 2 is covered in the table of contents. So, if you ever want a background of it, go ahead and click on it. And near the bottom is a link to search the TGM 2. Well, it doesn't say 2, but I'm assuming it is. I could be completely wrong about this, but the blue box at the top that says search TGM, I think that's for TGM 1, but I could be so wrong. So let me know if I'm incorrect. Once you've completed your search, you will be taken to an About This Item tab, which is on the right. And many, but not all, of the items that you find have the option to view the MARC record, which is pretty handy. As you can see from the screenshots, from the GMGPC field and connection, you can subdivide these terms. All right. So this one, I just think this is really cool because these are fire insurance maps made way back in the day. And let's see. So I used LCGFT just for let's see, fire insurance maps and maps. But then Connection actually added an AAT and an RBMGF to it as well. Okay. Mary Dunbar and Jewel Tea Company issued small cookbooks that were actually advertisements for the company. Before I realized that this was a unique kind of cookbook, I used the LCGFT term cookbooks, but then I looked around and realized that this is kind of just a big ad with recipes. So I found the RBGENR term, books printed as advertisements, from the rare books and manuscripts section. All right, we hope you've enjoyed our presentation and that you're leaving with information that will be useful to you. If you ever have questions about genres or other cataloging topics, please contact the CMC at cmc@illinoisheartland.org. Just added a little PSA here for you, you know, cataloging has lots of rules already, so, you know, please let's not add the morgue safety #1 rule on the left to the cataloging rules.
Listed here are our resources used in this presentation. And then on the call today are Barb Scoby, Dr. Pamela Thomas, myself, Mary Cornell, Eric McKinney, Kate Anderberg, Blake Walter, Katie Roberts, and Andrea Giosta. Any questions?
Hi, Barb and Mary. We don't have any right now, but I have allowed people to unmute themselves. I've also added the link to the evaluation form, so please don't forget to do that. The PowerPoint without the notes is uploaded to L2, correct? Mary?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Sorry, I took a sip of coffee.
That's okay. And then the slides with the notes will be uploaded after the presentation is over. And as always, we record this and send out the link, usually within a few business days after the presentation. And then don't forget to register for our presentation next month. I'll be covering parts, volumes, and issues exploring serials cataloging. So if you haven't registered for that and are interested, please do that. And as always, we're looking for future topics to cover. Still no questions. Remember, okay, Melissa says, do you have any recommendations for controlled vocab options for loanable technology? In other words, calculators, power cords, etc.
My first thought is equipment because I know that that is an LCGFT. Other than that, let me think. I know there's also a couple of the SORI that we didn't include as well that might be helpful. And I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but I can always send those along.
Okay. Our next question is from Blake. Since most of my cataloging has been in academic libraries where I've not done much with literature, I have not used genre terms much. I'm used to searching for them in connection in the LC authority files. Do you search genre terms in connection authority files?
I do, but then sometimes it's like I can't find what I want. So that's when I go to other thesauri to see, you know, what they might have to offer.
Same. So I also there's also the LC authorities that you can search as well. So that should have the same things that you find in connection. But I also have sometimes that say I'm doing some work for queer cataloging, so I'll end up using one thesauri that we didn't mention, which is the Homosaurus, that has both terminology as well as genre headings, so subject headings and genre headings. So, but I've also used RBMS as well too, depending on the materials.
Okay, and Blake added, it seems like the online LC authority files have the full LCGFT set of terms.
Yeah, and I also appreciate that sometimes you'll find if you actually search the authorities, you'll actually find a scope note, which they should be in connection, but sometimes they're not as complete if somebody's going through the process of updating them.
Oh, and back to the headings for the electronic type things. I did some power cords and things a little while ago, and I will add that to the notes when I look at. Yeah, I'll go back and look and I'll let y'all know.
Okay, thanks. And Melissa says thanks. Melissa says, are you willing to answer questions about the 380 field, or should I save that for another time? Save those for another time. We can answer those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We use those.
I might unmute for this.
Sure, go.
I've heard two kind of conflicting opinions for what to put in the 380 field. One was, anything that you put in the 655, copy all of those into the 380. And then the other one I've heard is, just, choose one for the 380, but the 380 is a repeatable field.
It is.
And what I've seen, especially I catalog a lot of streaming videos, sometimes in practice, what I see when I'm choosing records is that they'll put motion pictures in the 380, but they won't put that in the 655. Instead, the 655 will have a bunch of other terms. And as you can imagine, with motion pictures, there's actually a lot of terms. So if I was going to copy all of them into the 380, there might be 4 to 6 terms there. So I was just wondering what you guys do, what you think about, either option.
So I will say with DVDs, and I'm looking at the 380 and BIP formats and standards right now, trying to figure out why I was taught to do it that way. But so the way I was taught to do it, which was the second way that you talked about, where if say I'm cataloging a DVD, and I'm sorry, but I just have this case sitting next to me of say Twilight, what I would put in the 380s is the most broad version of the term that would have to pertain with that in genre. So that would be motion pictures. And then in the 655s, you put say like fantasy films, romance films, things like that are a little bit more specific to the film in general.
Yes, I was taught that you put the broadest term in the 380, but it does also need to be in a 655.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. I guess I also have a theoretical question about the 380. Do you know what it's for? That might also help me kind of figure out why to put, just the one piece there, or not.
So
do you know what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
like,
yes.
655 is controllable. It's visible in our catalog. There's a lot of good. It's older, so historically it has some consistency, and there's a lot of great reasons to use it. The 380 is newer, and yeah, I feel like it must have been added for a good reason, but I kind of don't really know why.
So according to BIP formats and standards, it's been added to differentiate a work from another work with the same title. So I think that's the overarching thing that you would run into. I won't get into NACO too deeply, but I know that's also used with a NACO record, say if you're creating a series title or something like that. So I don't see it used very often in books, but I think we see it more in, say, AV records to try to differentiate titles. That's the biggest thing I can think of off the top of my head.
And this is an RDA thing, correct?
I would assume so from reading what I'm reading.
Since it's form of work, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, because you use that a lot for different parts of a record too.
And I think it's just, preparing those MARC records for the future and how they're going to pull data from those MARC records. That's just my own personal supposition, though.
Okay, I think that's helpful, that it's kind of like, to broadly categorize as opposed to getting into the weeds for that 380 field. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, so Blake commented, sparkly vampires doesn't seem to be a valid genre heading.
Vampire
Sad
Films is
news.
though. Sorry.
But you can't do sparkly vampires. You could always, suggest that as a heading to add. Dina said that's also what is on the share editing checklist, 380, the most general term. Thanks, Dina. And then Kira, thank you for asking that question. I've often wondered what the point of 380 is. Well, I often wonder what the point of some of the fields are as well. And they don't always give us that information. So does anybody have any other questions about today's topic? If not, you can just ask some general cataloging questions. Are the RBGENR headings not controllable in connection? That's just my own personal question.
As far as I know, no.
Okay.
The only ones that you can actually control are official Library of Congress subject or genre headings.
Okay. Nobody has any other questions? Okay, well, I want to thank Mary and Barb for doing this presentation and thank all of you for joining us. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.